documents, mais pas tout, qui montrent que tout le programme était mené et dirigé par les ministres et les adjoints politiques et non pas par des fonctionnaires. C'est clair. Selon les documents que le gouvernement nous a envoyés au comité des finances, que c'était les bureaux des ministres, y compris le bureau du Premier ministre, qui ont mené à la décision de donner ce contrat à l'organisme uni, la même organisation qui avait payé 500 000 $ à la famille Trudeau. On a juste quelques petits exemples avec lesquels on va commencer aujourd'hui, qui montrent juste auquel point il y a eu de l'ingérence politique dans la création de cette recommandation. Un courriel de Mme Kovarup, qui est un fonctionnaire, un autre fonctionnaire, qui dit que le programme était un spectacle de merde et que le bureau de ministre était impliqué. La même fonctionnaire a dit que l'organisme uni était en contact avec le bureau du ministre, ses meilleurs amis, et je traduis, et déjà, on voit dedans, le 7 mai, que les relations entre Uni et le bureau du ministre des Finances étaient en train de mener ce programme et que, selon la fonctionnaire, l'organisme était le meilleur ami du bureau du ministre. La même fonctionnaire a écrit au conseil privé que le bureau du Premier ministre s'y impliquait dans le dossier. Et comme je viens de dire, que le programme était en train de devenir un spectacle de merde, et je cite. Donc, voilà un fonctionnaire qui parle de l'ingérence du bureau du ministre des Finances et du bureau du Premier ministre. Et parlons du bureau du Premier ministre. On a un courriel de 13 avril, une semaine avant que les fonctionnaires ont même reçu une proposition de oui, de Mark Kielburger, qui est en contact direct avec Katie Telford, le chef du cabinet du Premier ministre, envoyant tout son appui. Donc, on a un courriel de Craig Kielburger à Ben Chin, un conseiller senior à Justin Trudeau, indiquant que ce conseiller avait été directement impliqué en créant et définissant le programme et le remerciant pour le faire. Ça contredit le gouvernement qui prétend que les adjoints politiques n'avaient rien à voir avec la création du programme et que c'était simplement les fonctionnaires. Ici, des courriels qui montrent qu'un adjoint au plus haut niveau était impliqué dans la création et la formation de ce programme. Une preuve de plus. Et aussi, on a la preuve que les relations entre Uni et la famille Trudeau étaient en jeu dans la décision. Voilà la proposition. Ça, c'est livré par le bureau du Premier ministre. Uni, Canada. Ça, c'est la proposition. Le jour avant que le programme Uni est allé au cabinet. Le jour avant. Et qu'est-ce qu'ils ont souligné dans la proposition? Oh oui! C'est Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, belle photo, et Margaret Trudeau. Donc, on parle de la proposition qui allait aller devant le cabinet, un document entre les mains des adjoints politiques au bureau du Premier ministre, qui montre les liens entre UNI et la famille Trudeau. La famille qui avait reçu, n'oubliez pas, 500 000 $ de frais et de remboursement de cette même organisation. Donc, voilà beaucoup d'informations qui montrent les liens entre l'UNI, les adjoints politiques et les politiciens, y compris le Premier ministre. On a aussi un courriel de Craig Kielburger directement à Bill Morneau qu'on reçoit le 26 avril. N'oublions pas que c'est avant qu'il y a eu une proposition par les fonctionnaires. Parlons de leur conversation. Mais malheureusement, c'est caviardé ce dont ils ont parlé. C'est caviardé. J'ai beaucoup apprécié votre appel. Je constate que votre équipe a beaucoup de données. Si ça vous aide, j'attache 2 documents. Les documents dans le courriel qui a été écrit il y a 2 jours, mais caviardé. On ne sait aucune idée ce que c'est. Pourquoi est-ce que c'est caché? On devrait poser ces questions-là. Parce que voilà les autres documents. Le Premier ministre dit qu'il n'a rien à cacher. Rien à cacher. C'est beaucoup à cacher. Ça, c'est juste une page. Une autre page. Caviardé. Un courriel entre Carla Qualtrough, le ministre, et son sous-ministre. Ça, c'est un courriel entre Kielburger et on ne sait pas qui. Parce qu'on on cache même l'identité de cette personne qui a reçu ces documents. Finalement, on a un autre document. Bonne lecture, hein? Seule chose que ce n'est pas pertinent. Il faut accepter leurs paroles en assumant que ce n'est pas pertinent parce qu'on ne peut pas lire parce que tout est empêché et caviardé. Oh, un autre document caviardé. Un autre document caviardé. Alors, il y a beaucoup de secrets qui sont cachés en arrière la noire. On aimerait bien poser les questions là-dessus au comité, hein? Mais pourquoi n'est-on pas capable de le faire? Parce que le Premier ministre a prorogé le Parlement. Il a fermé tous les comités. Donc, on ne peut pas demander qu'est-ce qui est dans ces documents. C'est intéressant que la même journée que ces documents caviardés ont été livrés au public, le Premier ministre a décidé de fermer toutes les enquêtes. Hein? Quelle coïncidence! Donc, c'est clair. Justin Trudeau a quelque chose à cacher. Il ne veut pas que les Canadiens sachions ce qui est dans ces documents. Et c'est exactement la raison pour laquelle il a fermé ces enquêtes. Mais nous, les conservateurs, allons continuer à faire pression, à rendre le gouvernement imputable et à chercher la vérité. Ladies and gentlemen, we now know why Justin Trudeau shut down those parliamentary investigations yesterday. We have the documents right here. Let me start with an email from Michelle Kovacevic, one of the top Finance Canada officials. She, to start off with, says the Canada Student Service Grant is, quote, a bit of a shit show. And I'm quoting, excuse the language, but it's right there in the bureaucratic document. That's not how bureaucrats normally communicate in their official emails and memos back and forth. But apparently, this highly respected public servant felt it was an appropriate characterization. That was April 20th, exactly when the Kielburgers were in the process of negotiating to get this $500 million program set up. The same public servant writes another email to one of her colleagues in which she says that we is connecting with my minister's office. They are all besties. Besties. The finance minister's office is besties with the we organization that they're attempting to give $500 million. Then we have another email from the same public servant to the Privy Council office, in which she says, in direct contradiction to what Justin Trudeau testified under oath, that the Prime Minister's office was, quote, weighing in. This is in April, well before the May 8th date when the Prime Minister claimed he first learned of it. If he just learned of it on May 8th, why is it that his office was quote unquote, weighing in on the issue 17 days earlier? Then we have a lovely email from Mark Kielburger to Katie Telford, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, on April 13th, showing the contacts are forming between them. And then we have further emails to the PMO from Craig Kielburger to Ben Chen, Senior Advisor to the PMO, to the Justin Trudeau, saying, hello, Ben, thank you for your kindness in helping shape our latest program with the government. Warmly, Craig. So now we know that the program, far from being dreamed up by a bunch of mid-level bureaucrats in a faraway department, was actually shaped by one of the Prime Minister's top advisors. And what would that advisor have had in his possession when he shaped that proposal? Well, he would have had this document. This is called Government of Canada and We, Revised Proposal, I Want to Help, COVID-19 Youth Service. This was in the hands of the Prime Minister's office. This comes right from the Prime Minister's office. And what was the critical information they were considering the day before the proposal went to Cabinet? Well, let's turn the page, and what do you see here? Sophie Gregoire Trudeau highlighted, Margaret Trudeau highlighted. Why would it have been relevant for the Prime Minister's office to have in its possession a document that highlights the Prime Minister's mother and spouse, who just happened to be paid by the same organization that the COVID Cabinet Committee would approve a $500 million for the very next day? Then we have here an email from Craig Kielburger to Bill Morneau. And, you know, we'd love to learn about the attached documents in it, but unfortunately, in what is to become a trend throughout this package, it's all the relevant information in the two documents are completely blacked out. Another email from Craig Kielburger that went to someone in the government the same day he spoke to Bill Morneau on the phone, but we don't know who received the email, that's blacked out, or what the email said, all blacked out. Here's an email from the minister responsible for the department that granted the $500 million to her top bureaucrat. Again, all the substance is blacked out. And that would not be the first time. Next page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. This page, blacked out. Why don't we ask what's in those pages at a parliamentary committee? Well, I'll tell you why. Justin Trudeau shut down those parliamentary committees. When did he do it? The same day these documents became public. What a coincidence. The Prime Minister goes to the Governor General's office and says, Gigi, I'm about to release some very damning information, but I've covered it in black ink, and if you'll just shut down Parliament for me today, then none of the opposition politicians can force me to remove that ink and reveal the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a cover-up. Conservatives will not relent. We will continue to fight to get to the truth. The Prime Minister personally intervened to get a $500 million grant to a group that had paid his family $500 million. He is covering it up by blacking it out and shutting down our investigations. But I've got news for him. Conservatives are just getting started. I'd now like to turn the floor over for more of a cover-up, which our Shadow Minister of Ethics can bring to light, because he is part of a different investigation that the Prime Minister has conveniently shut down just on one of the most important days. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much to MP Poilievre, our Shadow Minister for Finance, who's done a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of heavy reading. It would be heavier if not for so much black ink as he displayed. And we've heard, I think the the phrase was coined during the Watergate scandal in the United States, that it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. And Canadians are going to have to decide, in this case, which is worse. Is it our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, twice found guilty of breaking the law in his trip to Billionaire Island and his interference in the criminal prosecution of SNC-Lavalin, now under investigation for a third time, following his awarding of a $500 million agreement to a company that paid his family at least $500,000. Or is it worse that the Prime Minister slammed the door shut on the investigations into corruption in his own government? Multiple parliamentary committees investigating him, his PMO, his government, and his ministers. New investigations were starting in different committees. We've heard about the investigation at the Finance Committee, and the Prime Minister made a big show yesterday that there'd be documents released. They're redacted. They're blacked out. There can be no order from committee to unredact them because he's locked the committee doors. At the Ethics Committee, today, members were to receive documents from the company that has brokered all of the speaking engagements for members of the Trudeau family since 2008. Today, we were to get those documents. Members of the committee will not, now that the Prime Minister has locked the doors and locked those documents away. So is there a pattern in this government, in the Trudeau Liberal government, between family members receiving lucrative speaking contracts and lucrative government contracts being awarded? Well, the Prime Minister's made sure that we're not able to find out for ourselves. Canadians should ask, what is the Prime Minister trying to hide? And the opposition is going to continue to ask that very question. They don't want Canadians to see what are in the documents that were released to the Finance Committee. They don't want Canadians, they don't even want members of Parliament to see the documents that were to be released to the Ethics Committee. They don't want to hear testimony at other parliamentary committees to investigate why this organization, this WE organization that was ill-equipped to deliver on this program, was awarded this lucrative contract to begin with. We're going to continue to ask those tough questions. We're going to continue to press the Liberals for the truth. And shuffling the deck chairs around the Titanic is not going to solve the problem, the rot of corruption around the cabinet table that's rooted with the Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
We will now be going to questions. Nous allons maintenant aux questions. We will start on the phone today. Nous allons commencer sur le téléphone aujourd'hui. We ask journalists to ask one question and one follow-up. Nous demandons aux journalistes de demander une question et une question de suivi. Operator?
Thank you. Please press star 1 if you have a question. Veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 si vous avez une question. Our first question is from Mia Robson from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead, à vous la parole.
Yes, good morning. I'm not sure whether which one of you wants to respond to this, maybe both. Just wondering, you're saying that the Conservatives are just getting started. What does that mean, and what do you intend to do next with these documents?
Well, we have received some limited forms of what the government's been up to, but we're going to continue to ask questions of them and look for more information, look for the rationale, and ask them to explain to Canadians why these pages are heavily blacked out, why they are redacted. There are organizations that have been asked to appear at committee. There's been documents that have been ordered by committee. Those organizations, Speaker Spotlight for one, they can help restore Canadians' confidence in their democratic institutions and send the prepared document due today. It was due today. They can send it to Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition. Let us see what's inside those documents. You don't need to be handcuffed by the Prime Minister proroguing Parliament. if this was about introducing a speech from the throne, the reset that he was looking for, he could have prorogued on September 22nd and delivered that speech on the 23rd. This is about one thing and one thing only. It's about hiding from the truth, avoiding accountability, and it's his architecture of a cover-up.
Thanks. And also, I'm just wondering on in terms of the speech from the throne and it being a confidence vote, is there anything that the Liberals would be able to put in there to discuss with the Conservatives that would convince the Conservatives to support that throne speech, or is the Conservative support not possible?
The Prime Minister very much wants us to talk today about a speech that hasn't even been written yet. And the only purpose of that exercise is to distract Canadians from corruption in his government. We're not able to comment on hypotheticals that may or may not be in the speech. In the meantime, I'm quite sure they're not going to share it with us. But the information that we do have on the scandal and the information that we continue to uncover, we'll talk about that and we'll share it with Canadians at every opportunity.
Opérateur, prochaine question.
Thank you. Our following question is from Christy Kirkup from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Good morning. I'm wondering, you're obviously making the allegation that there was a, quote, cover-up going on, and I know you cited a number of documents this morning that you say support that thesis. But is there, one particular document or, aspect of these documents that really jumps out? Is it the, quote, SHIT show, or what is the document that really jumps out to support your thesis of a cover-up?
Well, we have a top and trusted public servant saying that the Prime Minister's office was weighing in on the creation of the program and the recommendation to give it to we. So this contradicts what the Prime Minister told us in sworn testimony before the Finance Committee, where he claimed his office had nothing to do with it. It was simply public servants who had concocted this scheme to give all of this money to a group that had paid his family $500,000. Now we know that the WE organization was in contact with the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, with two of his senior policy advisors, that Craig Kielburger thanks one of the top Trudeau advisors for shaping the program and shaping the proposal. So we know now that the public servants felt pressure because they viewed we as being, and I quote, besties with the Finance Minister's office. So public servants believed that there was a friendship between the Prime Minister, his Finance Minister, and we, and they're screaming out with extraordinarily unusual language in these memos that they are under deep pressure to recommend this group, which had paid off the Prime Minister's family. You've all been around here for a while. When have you heard a public servant put in writing, on the record, in a memo to another public servant, that the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Minister's office have made a, quote, shit show out of a program that they're trying to impose? When have you seen a public servant describe a Finance Minister's office as being besties with a group that is in line to get $500 million? That is not normal language by public servants. That is public servants who are under deep duress and pressure from their political masters to direct a large amount of money to a favored organization.
And just as a follow-up, is there anything in the document that suggests that...
Ms. Kirkup, can I just do that answer quickly in French, and then I'll take your second question? Est-ce qu'elle est là? OK. Merci. Alors, la question, c'était qu'est-ce qui est dans les courriels qui montrent un camouflage? La réponse, c'est qu'il y a des courriels qui montrent une implication parmi le chef du cabinet du Premier ministre, deux de ses conseillers politiques, très de haut niveau. L'un qui reçoit de crédit de M. Kielburger. M. Kielburger dit merci d'avoir nous aidé à créer le programme en question. On a un autre fonctionnaire qui dit que c'est un spectacle de merde, la façon dont le Premier ministre et le ministre des Finances s'impliquent dans le programme, et que l'organisme en question qui était considéré pour 500 millions de dollars était de meilleurs amis avec le bureau du ministre des Finances. Vous êtes ici de longue date, vous les journalistes. Vous savez comment les journalistes, vous savez comment les fonctionnaires écrivent leur mémorandum. Ils n'utilisent pas des mots comme spectacle de merde et meilleurs amis pour décrire une situation comme ça. C'était clair que les fonctionnaires faisaient face à une énorme pression de favoriser ce groupe qui avait payé 500 000 $ à la famille Trudeau.
Thank you. Is there anything in the documents, based on your assessment right now, that indicates why you say the Liberals were going out of their way to help we? What was in it for the government?
I'll just mention that, in a May 4th policy proposal that the Prime Minister's office had in its possession the day before it went to Cabinet, it highlights that the We organization employed the Prime Minister's wife and his mother. It's right there in the document that would have been possessed by numerous members of the Prime Minister's team. Why was it important for them to be reflecting on the Prime Minister's family involvement with this group the day before the $500 million grant to the group went to Cabinet? That, too, demonstrates that this was driven by the Team Trudeau in the interests of the Prime Minister and his family.
One last question on the phone. Une dernière question sur le téléphone avant qu'on va à la chambre.
Thank you. Our last question is from Tom Korski from Blacklock's Reporter. Please go ahead.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Barrett. I want to be sure I understand, sir. Is it your understanding that the Toronto Talent Agency supplied all those that would be 14 years worth of records that you had sought through your successful motion, that the clerk has all those records, that it was completely fulsome response, but you haven't been able to see those? Is that correct?
The documents that we requested at committee by motion, it's important to note that Liberal members of the committee jumped up and down and flailed wildly when we proposed that we wanted to determine if there was a connection between speaking fees paid to members of the Trudeau family and government contracts being awarded. There were going to be significant restrictions on members when they reviewed these documents. In a room, without staff, numbered copies, no electronic devices, no emails, or by appointment only with the clerk. We're not talking about the National Security Intelligence Review Committee here. We're talking about speaking fees paid to the Prime Minister's family. And it was treated as if it was a matter of national security by Liberal members on the committee. This organization asked the committee for an extension. In good faith, we offered them that extension. They asked for tomorrow, or excuse me, for today to be the day that they would deliver the documents to us. My understanding is that as of early this morning, the clerk was not in possession of the documents, but the organization is no longer required to provide them to the clerk. Once Parliament was prorogued yesterday, the order for production of documents was eliminated, just like our mandate as a committee. So the I understand that there was the scope of the documents, a number of pages, maybe less than 20, in an Excel spreadsheet. So they had prepared the document, but they didn't send it a day early. They were waiting till today. Why?
And for Mr. Poilievre, if I can ask you, I want to try to just two clarifications in the one, if I can. Is it your understanding that when the House comes back after September 23rd, that a simple motion will bring all this committee work back, including the special committee, that it can be done just by a straightforward motion? And is it your understanding that the opposition will not grant unanimous consent, as it did in March, to send the House out of normal session, and that the House, you anticipate, will go all winter long in doing work, budget, committee work, etc., that has to be done?
So on the first question, the answer is yes. On the second question, I don't know what the parliamentary calendar will look like in the fall, but I, for one, think it's time the Prime Minister get back to work. He's been hiding since March. He's had every excuse under the sun. But reality is, it's time that he was accountable. It's time that he come out of hiding and into the sunlight and face some tough and clear questions. And I will be fighting, as speaking for myself now, to get Parliament back so that he answers those questions. Thank you.
We will now go to the room. Mackenzie.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre. Mackenzie Gray with CTV. Yesterday and today you've talked about corruption and cover-up. Now you're very upset about what's in the documents today and the redactions that have gone forward. And now the Prime Minister has prorogued Parliament for a few weeks. To me, that would sound like your party, and you in particular, have lost confidence in the government, that you no longer think that they should be able to govern. But before, when Mr. Barrett was asked about whether or not your party will vote against the throne speech, he said that while it's too early to determine whether or not we'll vote on something that's hypothetical, how is it even a question at this point in time that you will attempt to bring down the government at the next possible opportunity? Is that for Pierre or either one of you?
I have good news. The Conservatives are electing the next Prime Minister of Canada this weekend. And when we elect the leader of the Conservative Party this weekend, there's going to be a lot of decisions that the leader has to make. They're going to have to meet with our caucus and consult on a number of issues. Unlike the Liberals, we are not solely focused on the scandals that have the curtains burning in the Prime Minister's office. There are a number of issues affecting Canadians. We're in a global pandemic. We're in recessionary times. Canadians are worried about paying the bills, feeding their families, and Justin Trudeau is completely preoccupied with the scandals that have that have him in the hot seat, under investigation again. So we'll wait and see what September 23rd brings. We'll wait and see what the new leader of the Conservative Party decides in consultation with our caucus with respect to the throne speech.
So it sounds like, despite the corruption, the cover-up, the frustration about the WE scandal, all the myriad of things that we've heard many Conservative MPs bring forward in this room every day, that there's still some kind of opportunity that your party would actually vote in favor of keeping the government with this throne speech. Is that correct?
Do I think that Justin Trudeau should be the Prime Minister? Absolutely not. I don't think he should have had a second shot at that after he was found to have broken the law a second time last year. Here we are with the Liberals on a shortened leash, and they've lost their majority, and we will work as a caucus to hold the government to account, and we will continue to get answers. The work that we do as parliamentarians at committee has been stopped by the Prime Minister. If there's an election tomorrow, there's no more hearings, there's no more release of documents, and so we will we'll see what happens when the House convenes in September.
Monsieur Poilievre, Christian Noël de Radio-Canada. Comment ça va?
Bien, merci.
Good morning. How are
oui,
you?
merci. C'est un peu la même question, dans le fond, que j'aimerais vous poser en français. Vous n'avez vraiment pas confiance envers le gouvernement. Vous dites qu'il y a de la corruption, qu'on essaie de cacher la vérité aux Canadiens. Et là, vous allez avoir une chance, le 23 septembre ou le 24, de voter contre un discours du trône, mais on ne sent pas que vous êtes prêt à le faire. Pourquoi vous n'êtes pas prêt à voter, à dire maintenant que vous allez défaire le gouvernement dans un mois?
Permettez-moi de vous poser une question. Si vous étiez Justin Trudeau, est-ce que vous voudriez que tous ces secrets soient exposés avant ou après les élections?
Question, mais je répète ma première question qui est là. Pourquoi vous ne voulez pas le faire tomber?
Okay, si vous ne voulez pas répondre à la question, je vais répondre moi-même. Je vais répondre moi-même que Justin Trudeau aimerait très, très bien avoir une élection avant que la vérité soit connue. Nous, les conservateurs, nous voulons que les Canadiens sachent la vérité avant de voter. Quand est-ce que la vérité sera disponible pour tout le monde? On ne sait pas. Parce que le Premier ministre a prorogé et empêché les enquêtes des comités parlementaires. Mais ça ne nous empêche pas de continuer à utiliser tous les outils disponibles à une opposition dans un Parlement minoritaire pour avoir accès à la vérité. On va continuer jusqu'à la fin pour que les Canadiens sachent la vérité. Puis après ça, les Canadiens vont pouvoir rendre leur décision de qui devrait être en gouvernement. Merci beaucoup.
Justement, en suivi, si vous me permettez, il y a une frustration qu'on sent de votre part. Si vous aviez la possibilité d'être en comité dans les prochaines semaines, quels sont les points d'ombre que vous voyez présentement que vous voulez éclaircir?
Mais j'aimerais que les documents qui sont caviardés soient publiés. J'aimerais appeler tous les adjoints du Premier ministre, des proches de M. Trudeau qui ont été impliqués dans la décision et la création de cette contribution à la groupe qui a payé la famille Trudeau. J'aimerais savoir si ces gens-là ont parlé directement au Premier ministre, contrairement à sa déclaration qu'il ne savait rien avant la réunion du cabinet. Aussi, nous voulons savoir pourquoi les images de la mère et de l'épouse de M. Trudeau étaient soulignées parmi les membres du cabinet du Premier ministre le jour avant la décision de verser cet argent-là à ce groupe. Finalement, on veut savoir l'implication de la nouvelle ministre des Finances. Elle était la présidente du comité COVID qui a originalement approuvé les 500 millions de dollars pour l'organisme uni. Donc, elle devrait témoigner elle-même quelque chose de laquelle elle se cache maintenant avec la décision de son Premier ministre de proroger le Parlement. Merci beaucoup.
Bonjour, l'inaudible, la presse canadienne. Alors, ça va être pour vous aussi, M. Poilievre. J'aimerais savoir, il y avait 5000 pages. Quelle portion de ces pages-là a été caviardée?
5,000 pages, and how many of those 5,000 pages were redacted?
Je pense qu'il y en a plusieurs ici. Je vais les laisser.
There are many pages here.
Tu peux faire des photocopies aussi.
You can make photocopies
of them if you wish. Ils sont disponibles en toute transparence de ma part. Mais on verra. On est en train de lire les documents. Ce qu'on voit, par exemple, c'est que on ne sait pas s'il y a 5,000 pages. Parce qu'il y a beaucoup de documents qui sont des copiés d'autres documents. Alors, le même document fourni à plusieurs reprises. Et je pense que le gouvernement essaie de compter des documents double ou triple fois pour arriver à ce chiffre. Donc, moi, je veux que vous sachiez qu'il n'y a pas beaucoup de transparence dans ces dossiers et que le gouvernement est en train de cacher beaucoup d'informations qu'ils ne veulent pas que les Canadiens sachent.
Mais vous nous en avez montré 5 pages, là, mais j'imagine que c'est plus que 5 pages qui sont caviardes. Sur un autre sujet, le discours du trône, d'un autre angle, le Bloc québécois a déjà fait sa liste de ce qu'il voudrait voir dans ce discours du trône. Est-ce que vous, je sais que vous attendez votre prochain chef, mais en attendant, vous êtes quand même aux finances, à surveiller les finances depuis un certain temps. Est-ce que vous avez des demandes spécifiques?
Mais premièrement, nous voulons que le gouvernement permettre le public de voir tous les documents et toutes les informations qui sont caviardées dans les dossiers entre mes mains. Ça, c'est juste un exemple. Alors, nous voulons une grande transparence en matière de la scandale uni et c'est une des revendications que les conservateurs feront par rapport à la discours du trône. Merci.
David Thurton, CBC News. Do you think the Prime Minister is trying to force an election?
I think that Justin Trudeau wants us to talk about anything other than the scandals that have engulfed his office, the corruption that we're seeing, and like proroguing Parliament to stop investigations. The next best thing is that at the end of September there's an election and there's no more information. Canadians would go and cast their ballots not knowing the full truth, and so I do think any opportunity that Justin Trudeau has to change the channel, to distract from and obscure the facts, that he's taking that opportunity.
Do you think he's trying to force an election?
I think that Justin Trudeau is trying to use every measure possible to make sure that the truth doesn't come out.
And I think it was said that, and maybe this is a question for Pierre, that there are things in those documents that you've read so far that contradict what the Prime Minister has testified. Can you just walk us through that again, or just... Sure. Yeah.
Well, first, he claimed that this whole scheme to give $500 million to a group that had paid his family $500,000 was dreamed up by public servants. It's clear from the documents that these public servants were under pressure from the PMO, whom they say, and I quote, is weighing in, and from the Finance Minister's office, who one public servant called besties with the We organization. It's also clear that top-level staff in the PMO were involved with the creation of the program. His senior advisor, Ben Chin, is credited with shaping the grant to We. He's credited by We itself. So far from being the project of some mid-level bureaucrat in a faraway department on the other side of the river, it was the Prime Minister's top advisors who were shaping the program. And they were doing it for weeks prior, many weeks prior, to the cabinet meeting where the Prime Minister claims he first learned about it. Finally, the Prime Minister's office has in its possession a proposal document which highlights, specifically went out of its way, for no particular public policy reason, to highlight that his mother and wife worked for the organization. That document is dated for one day before the first cabinet meeting that would approve the $500 million grant to the group. So this has Justin Trudeau's fingerprints written all over it. That said, he and his government are going to great lengths to black out information that might further implicate him. And that's why we want all the information released so that Canadians know the truth.
Thank you, and that'll be the end of the press conference. Merci, ça sera la fin de la conférence de presse.